Good morning, welcome. So today again I'm joined by Dave James and Justin Blake. Dave and James, as you probably know now, are both former podiatrists and clinic owners and now work as healthcare business mentors and coaches. So we're going to be talking every Wednesday, Dave, Justin and I, throughout this period to help you navigate the uncertainty and the chaos and all the questions that are probably coming up. And with that in mind, today we're going to be focusing on leadership. Why is good leadership critical right now whilst we've got chaos, uncertainty and a huge global grief reaction occurring? And what is good leadership, with some examples that I'm looking forward to hearing from Justin about sailing, and I'm sure Dave has some stories from A&E too. So let's get started. Good morning, boys.
Good morning.
Good morning. So first of all, why is good leadership critical at this time? Justin, do you want to go first?
I'll lead off then, shall I?
You lead off. Yeah.
Well, somebody's got to step up and be a leader, from right across to the governments to, you know, we're slow off the mark with their leadership, I think, you know, and that applies, I suppose, to us as well. And I mean, leadership means leadership of yourself, of your close sort of family and relations, and in a clinical healthcare business setting, it's of your team, your patients and the colleagues that you're working with. And so the because, well, you know, you're going to have to, you know, really sort of step up, especially in these worrying times. And as you said, I've done a bit of sailing before, and we were talking earlier, things can go wrong with sailing like very, very, very quickly. And as Dave talked about before, you need to be prepared, and you can have certain systems in place for eventualities, but then something comes along and it just completely flips things on its
It's very much like now, because I know I made a video a few weeks ago talking about risks in small businesses and risks in clinics, and I used the example of a local cricket club that was really heavily flooded to show that, you know, weather can have a big impact on small businesses too, particularly those that need, you know, grounds like cricket clubs and rugby clubs and football clubs and things over the winter. But obviously this is one of those unforeseen things on a huge, huge scale. This is a typhoon if you're sailing.
Yeah. This is a rather large wave that's going to sweep over you, and you know, spin you around. And sort of when the dust settles, and I mean, but of course this situation is continuing to evolve and continuing to sort of spin things out of control, rather than it's just a one-off event. So, you know, I wrote a couple of blogs over the last couple of weeks about leadership, and especially, I mean, I always loved sort of adventure and, you know, these crazy guys who went off with just like a big machete and down the Amazon. And so Shackleton, who, I don't know whether you know him, an Irish explorer, British expedition, went to the Antarctic 3 times. So he had experience, which improved his leadership over time. But in his last mission expedition, they were going to cross the Antarctic. They wanted to be the first ones to cross the Antarctic from side to side. And things went very wrong. And so with Shackleton, the mission expedition started out, and the leadership was all about getting across the Antarctic. And when the ship got stuck in their ice, they got iced in, the ship eventually got crushed and swallowed by the ice. The mission then, the leadership then had to change, and that was to get everybody back without dying. Yeah. And so, you know, you have to be able to adapt and sort of change things. So, you know, so leadership's about a lot about the day-to-day management of things, and having a normal routine and looking after the kids and getting the shopping in and doing all those sort of things as well. But then doing that, excuse me, the switching from the day-to-day routine and management stuff that you have to do, then to actually sort of like leading, be able to organize for that as well.
Yeah, and when the typhoon hits and it doesn't stop.
Yeah, and with leadership, you have to sort of accept the sort of responsibility of the situation you're in and sort of take ownership of it, and try with everything that you have at your disposal to improve the situation. So you're getting the best advice, reading the stuff that blocking out the things that are detrimental to improving the situation. Shackleton would the guys who he thought were going to be dissenting in his party, or were like the guys who were like didn't agree with his things, he didn't distance himself from those guys. He actually brought them in, and they were in his closer circle because he could not control them more, but influence them more. And so that's like in a lot of stuff on social media and all the crazy theories that are out there at the moment. You take all those on board, it's going to affect your perspective on things. So if you take those away, then that makes it that doesn't cloud the actual actions that you're sort of going to have to take in the situation. So it's very interesting.
So Dave, at the moment, oh sorry, my voice went. So Dave, at the moment, there is a huge global emotional response that is, everybody's at a different stage, at a different point at the moment, and how people are handling their emotions is vastly different as well. And I wondered whether it was almost like a global grief response to the loss of what was. What's your perspective on that, and how do we best handle this emotional response?
I have a copy of a book by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross called On Death and Dying, which is somewhere on the shelf behind me here, which came from, I'm embarrassed to say, it was either the University of Brighton Library or the University of East Sussex Library.
And you never returned it?
Yeah, it was when I started my nursing course down there, and I came home with it and never went back. So there's obviously library fees which I probably need to pay over the last 20 odd years. But this is, it's very classically that. I mean, we think about grief as being, you can only really grieve if somebody dies, if you lose someone. But actually, you can grieve anything. You can grieve. You break an item at home, you can grieve that because it has value to you. But we are seeing people at different stages. I've got the stage up here: denial, anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance. And how many people are going, no, this isn't happening, I'm going to go back out to the park and do what I want to do? How many people are going, okay, this is what we've got at the moment, they're in acceptance? How many people are angry at the whole situation and going, well, the government aren't doing this or they're not doing that? And depression. We're going to see a massive amount of depression which comes out of this. We are already. And it's kind of understanding where people are on those on that different stage, and it's accepting that. And I think, just in talking about leadership is really, and bringing people into the party is really, really important. And one of the things I remember from my NHS days is that whole kind of leadership and management debate. And people will go, well, leadership and management are the same thing, and they're not. They're very different. You can have a manager who is also a good leader, but you can't have somebody who you think is going to manage a situation and automatically become a leader. There's certain things which seem to happen. But a leader will be able to recognise these stages of grief in people, and will be able to accept where they are, and will be able to bring them back into the whole conversation and be able to help them through those stages at the point they need to. One of the phrases I use when I'm kind of coaching, mentoring people is you've got to take it to their door. You've got to accept where they are at the moment and help them at that point. It's no good saying, well, I'm over here and I've accepted it all, so it's all okay. You're depressed at the moment, but just get over it and come to where I am. You can't do that. You've got to go and appreciate where they are. But massive feelings of grief, massive angers, denial, changes in feeling, people behaving in very, very strange ways. But when you look at it objectively and you go, actually, I can see exactly what's going on now. And it explains just the variety of responses and behaviours at the moment. Massive.
And can we expect people to go through that Kubler-Ross model in a linear way, or do different stages occur at all different times, or you can feel you've completed one process but taken by surprise because somebody hasn't?
Well, people are unpredictable buggers, aren't they? So,
but again, because it's continually, it's just not one event. now. It's a continually evolving event. Then we're going to go through and back and loop and through and back to those different sort of stages.
Yeah, and I think recognizing that you're on this roller coaster and recognizing that you're part of this cycle is really important. You know, as an example for me, I don't mind self-isolation to some degree. I'm a little bit of an introvert anyway. So for me, part of this, I can accept. There's certain bits which I'm frustrated at, but I can deal with that. But I went down to take some stuff down to my parents a couple of days ago. And I'm a hugger, you know, I love hugging people. So for me at the moment, not being able to hug people is really, really hard work. And to some degree, I'm angry and depressed at that. So I see my mum and dad, they've just had someone die who they knew quite closely. Now, obviously they can't do anything about it apart from send a letter to them to show their condolences. I'm really looking forward to having a cup of tea with them and talking about that person's memory. But we can't do it at the moment. And that, for me, kind of takes me back along that cycle to a different place. So things can come along which, and I was going to say derail, but it's not even derailing. There's things which come along which just kind of knock you slightly, and you have to regain your balance. And over that period of going through that grieving cycle and that grieving process, you get better at taking those knocks. And think about someone, if you have someone close to you who does die, that over time you'll still grieve, but over time though the feelings that you experience with it will reduce somewhat.
So how at this time, Justin, from your sailing experience, when there is a huge amount of uncertainty and leadership is required, as leaders, we best handle our own emotions whilst chaos is going on around us, because we have feelings too, and our emotional response is going to have a big impact on how we handle a situation as well.
Yeah, well, the Shackleton, all the leadership books and things, and quote him, is when you run aground, you have to set a new mark. So it's all about marks and things. And I mean, that's a lot of things in, you know, whoever's flying the plane or whoever's sailing the boat, you know, if you're just slightly off course over a long time, you're going to end up in the wrong distance. I think we touched on that last week as well. It's the things that we do now that are going to influence where we're going to be coming out of the other end of this. So instead of sailing terms, you're 1 degree off and you're sailing from, you know, from across from Southampton to the Isle of Wight, we're all good. Okay, if we're sailing from the Isle of Wight to America and you're 1 degree off, we're going to end up in the Caribbean or sort of.
So course adjust and really keep focus. So you've got something to focus on.
We need to keep facing forward. Yeah, we need to keep we can't worry and dwell about what sort of happened in the sort of past, because we can't control that. So we've got to keep looking and keep advancing and bringing ourselves and the team, the family, and everything with us in that direction. That's what leadership is all about, and it's also, you know, not in a. I mean, I've had to work on that a lot over my sort of journey of practices and family and things. Not in terms of right, everybody, let's go. This is the way it's going. You know, it's, you know, take, you know, the support of those other sort of people as well, and the care that you take for them, and the time and the effort that you put into developing them as well is what leadership is all about. You know, that's what makes the real.
Super. And Dave, from your A&E days, I know you've spoken previously about how as a team you would be prepared for really sad days. Are there any particular tools or tips that you've got from the preparation that you're from your experience in A&E days that are relevant to now and to helping the teams of people that we lead almost accelerate or get through the process to be as functional as possible, as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this earlier. I think some of the things from A&E we won't talk about before breakfast, but the big thing was communication. It was everyone knew everyone knew their role, everyone knew where they sat within the team, everyone communicated and knew those kind of channels of communication, but there was no fear of speaking up on things. And I remember reading a book earlier this year on the importance of diversity as part of teams, because different people see different things in different ways. Now, if everyone saw things from the same perspective, you're not going to get a brilliant outcome. But if people see things from different perspectives, you get a much better outcome. But it's allowing people to be able to communicate their fears and their worries as part of that team. But communication, massively important. Flexibility as well, being willing to kind of change direction if you need to. And it's not, it's not moving forward and then suddenly going, I've got to move back. It's accepting maybe that you might have to just step sideways at different points and being flexible to the way you're moving forward, but also flexible to the needs of the people in the group. But probably one of the biggest things was planning for the worst. And, we all want to think about positive things at the moment and being happy and smiley and the world's a wonderful place, or it will be a wonderful place. But there's some really interesting research around people who kind of think negatively and think about the things which might go wrong, actually come up with some really interesting solutions for those things, because they know that bad stuff's going to happen, but they've already thought through in their heads, if not formally written down, they've already thought through in their heads some solutions to get past that point. And we used to train, we used to get PPE out and train, we used to do major incident training where we would imagine that somebody had dropped a bomb. Because when I was working in Oxford, someone, suddenly it's just everything just opens up, and you just literally bring the whole team on board. You're pulling people in from previous shifts, you're pulling people in from next shifts, you've got the police coming in and setting up there, you've got the ambulance service setting up. But we planned for those things to happen, and we planned for something not far worse than was going to happen, but we planned for something right at the extreme end. And that made a big difference, because then suddenly people started to think of all these weird things which might happen and started thinking about plans for them. So yeah, flexibility, communication, and planning for not the worst, but planning for negative outcomes.
And for me, that's something that's been really important, the communication, just having the conversations and acknowledging the things that are coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is as well, you look at the grief cycle, it's being able to have that communication with people and say, I kind of recognise where you might be in this at the moment, and I'm happy to have that conversation with you. But equally, if you're in a place where you're somewhere on that grief cycle, to be able to have a conversation with somebody else and say, this is what I'm feeling at the moment. And for all of that to be okay, we talked briefly about, there was a very interesting post someone put up saying, if you haven't come out of the end of this corona, pandemic, learning a new skill, like learning to play a musical instrument or a new role, that there's something not wrong, something wrong with you. And it's like, well, no, not really. Some people will take that advantage and do something with it. Some people won't be able to process that. But it's where people are, and it's accepting that.
Yeah, a friend of mine I spoke to, Rachel, was a year ahead of me at college, and she lives in Liverpool, so I've known her forever. And she was like, this is fantastic. I haven't had more than a week or 10 days off since I left school. I'm loving it. Everybody's safe, everybody's well, and she's just like, but everything else, business, well, that'll sort itself out. This is great. She's really enjoying herself.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, isn't it? There's a lot of people who've not had any time away from their, from working in the business forever at all, and it's a shock. And there's guilt which comes with that as well. There's guilt that I'm maybe not working as much as I should do, and there's guilt that I'm not serving my patients in the same way that I'm used to. But actually, that space, just that mental space and that physical space, it's really a good thing. I think there's a lot of people will be thinking about, how can I put this into my life from this point forward, or when I go back to work. And that's where there'll be a lot of good leadership around that. There'll be a lot of people out there going, right, I can show you how to do that, and I can help you with that, and I can make it the best for you. There'll be some people who'll be trying to say, no, you can't do that. You've got to go back to how things work. But that's always the way. But this time is, I think it's a gift. I think it's an absolute gift to people. But it's where you are on the stages of grief, and it's how you want to see that.
Quite a strange gift.
Yeah, it is.
A gift.
Gifts don't always come in nicely wrapped packages down your chimney from some fat bloke with a beard at Christmas. But yeah, it's looking at something and going, okay, I think it looks like this, but actually if I stand over here and look at it, how different does it look, or can I give it a different name? And it's that appreciation of things can look different from different perspectives and different times. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. If you don't want it, the problem.
Yeah. For some people, this is a massive problem, and I appreciate that, and I'm sensitive to that. For other people, it's a massive gift and a massive opportunity, and it depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
Justin, just before we started talking, you shared with us a clip of you sailing on the Clipper race between South Africa, I think it was, in Australia, and
right.
Oh my goodness me, a big wave came over and knocked everybody sideways.
Yeah.
Can you just talk us through that particular incident and how, as a team on that boat, you handled it?
So yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to take time off from our practices. 2013, and spent like 6 weeks, and so four nearly 5 weeks from Cape Town to Australia. I think if you're going to go and do a leg or cross an ocean, the Southern Ocean is the one to go to, and you're not probably going to get a chance again. I could, I've got people I know that I could get across the Atlantic, pretty easily, but Southern Ocean's a different thing. So between 4 days out of Cape Town, about 6:30 in the morning, we had one of those large waves that just picked up the boat and lifted it and turned it on its side and jumped it down. And luckily, in the way the boats are designed, it was, it came back up again. So your world goes, and I think we talked about just before, when things rapidly spiral like that, it's not like you're driving a car and things start to go wrong, or you can just pull to the side, or like, let's take a pause. You're in it. You're 500-600 miles from land. There's 20-30 foot waves all around. There's no. And then that's when leadership kicks in, and that's when plans sort of kick in, and that's when people sort of roles really and it was really interesting to see that the medic on board, and Suze was a London paramedic. She'd seen everything before. I mean, she just like switched on and took over and delegated people different roles to do. And the skipper on the boat was just like unbelievable. And people were scared, frightened. Just get me off here now. This isn't what I. We knew it was going to be setting out. We knew that it was going to. We'd planned for this. The day before we left, somebody actually didn't get on the boat to go because of the pre-day talk that we'd had about it. She decided, no, it wasn't for her. And a lot of people were thinking exactly the same thing when that boat went over. And so, yeah, leadership, you got to face forward. You got to accept the situation, and then you got to implement your plan to move forward with it. And yeah, that was definitely an experience. Yeah, you can see the video. I've got a link to it on my Facebook page. And it's pretty nuts. We had rougher seas than that. We had 8-10 days later, we had 80-90 mile an hour winds across the deck. Putting your gear on in the middle of the night to get up after like 3 hours sleep to climb your way out, holding on for grim death in pitch darkness with 70-80 mile an hour winds blowing. It's pretty, and I would never do it again. I would never do it again, never, ever, because it's just relentless. It's just continue. It's a little bit like
a little bit like the situation we're in now. Relentless.
Groundhog Day, which is just every day is the same. A grind. There was beautiful days and stuff, and there was amazing. And it was absolutely amazing. But in terms of the endurance of it, yeah, offshore sailing is like an extreme endurance. If you love like little sleep, and like really, really bad conditions ish. The boat never stops moving, and you would be sleeping on a bed with your arm inside a locker to secure you, just so you wouldn't be like, with the whole movement and stuff. It's noisy, it's things, and but the people there were just the way sort of you had to work as a team, and you had certain roles and jobs. It was experience, but yeah, definitely wouldn't. Not a 3-4 weeker again. Maybe 2-3 days.
So the summary points that I've taken from the two of you for all of those that need to step up as leaders of our industry, of our teams, of our communities. First of all, accept the situation and accept your own emotional responses. Take responsibility. I really heard that from you, Justin. Just take responsibility for the situation and accept that responsibility. Then implement the plans that you already have, or if you haven't got a plan, then create a plan for this situation and adjust your course accordingly, but keep focus on that direction so that
you really readjust every.
So you have a destination.
Yeah.
Be accepting of how the team and the people you're leading are feeling, and have an amount of flexibility within. I heard that very, very much from you, Dave, and the importance of communication, of keeping on talking. Are there any other points that you feel that I've perhaps missed there? It's critical to leadership.
I think leadership is one of those interesting things that, people organisations, and maybe they're great as managers, they're great people, but I think the thing about leadership is that people talk about following leaders, and actually leaders, I think, they're created by the environment they're in. They're people who do step up and do things. They're people who do the right thing at the right time, and they're accepting what's going on around them. But they're quite often chosen by the people, by the environment, and by the circumstances. Where I think managers can tend to be chosen by committee and interview. It's really difficult.
Yeah, you feel like leaders are chosen by the environmental factors of the situation. The environment finds the leader.
Yeah, I think there are people who are innately, they have leadership qualities, and they can stand up and they can lead in a certain situation. They can inspire people, help people to move forward. They can bring a team together. But a leader needs people around them to kind of make it happen. And they say any organisation doesn't have one person doing everything. It has a group of people working together, and the leader's almost that glue, that inspiration, that glue, which kind of brings people together. And I think sometimes they're chosen, sometimes it happens as a matter of circumstance. And if you think about things like the Winston Churchill's government during World War II, he was a great leader at that point, but he might not have been a good leader in another situation. So there's so many different kind of variables to it. But I think leaders are chosen. I think we'll see a lot of leaders appear now where maybe we didn't expect them to be leaders, and that's a great thing. It gives people a really good opportunity to show the skills they have.
Yeah. I mean, with Shackleton, I mean, there are questions about his preparation and everything before they actually went to the South Pole, and I mean, just the balls to be actually able to say, "Hey, we're going to go to the South Pole and we're going to walk across it, dog sled across it." It's just nuts anyway to lead that. So there's prep. Did he make bad mistakes when he got there? But it's how he reacted when they were in the shit that actually was the change in then, and that's where his leadership really took off. So. Yeah,
there's some interesting stuff around that, around those diverse groups. And there's one of the books I was reading earlier this year. They were talking about a mountain expedition where pretty much everyone died on this mountain expedition, and it wasn't because the people on the expedition didn't have experience; they couldn't manage those conditions. What happened was there were certain things which were changing around them, which had been picked up by members of the team, but because they got somebody who was in charge, they didn't feel they could challenge that person, and they didn't bring them to their attention. Whereas if they had have done, the outcome would have been very, very different. And I think with the leader of any team, you've got to be willing to listen to the concerns of the people around you. And because they will see things which you can't see. We've all got our biases, we've all got our blinkers on about things, but it's having that ability to kind of step back and go, right, let me listen to what you're truly saying and listen to your concerns, and let's see how we can move forward from that. And I think there's a lot of experiences in history where things have been done, and where people have thought they've had a leader that they've been following, and actually they haven't, because the leader hasn't been able to listen to everything else going on.
That's really interesting, because one of the things I wrote down was trust. That for me, leadership involves not just trusting yourself, but actually helping your team feel they trust themselves and the trust within each other, because without the trust, you can't get through it.
Yeah, every voice within that team is valuable. And this was something which was drummed into me right the way back in my early nursing days, that if someone asks you the question, what's part of the medical team, people will go, doctors, nurses, physios, podiatrists. Maybe people know what podiatrists are, of course, which back when I did it, I was like, what's a podiatrist? But what people forget is, what about the ward clerk? What about the cleaner? What about the porters? And if you take any of those people out who, okay, they haven't got a medical degree, or they haven't got all that kind of status, but actually you take them out of the equation and suddenly the whole system grinds to a halt. And we were taught very early on that their voice was as important as anyone else's, because they had a really important role, and probably more important than some of the other roles, to play as part of the team.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, both. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we will see you next week. And next week, we're going to start thinking about what the true assets of your business are, so that you can start forward thinking for the other side as you're setting your new direction. Take care, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Yeah.